Junction 5 at Sittingbourne, and that's following an accident. And also at Sittingbourne, there are severe delays on the A2 westbound, and that's because of the roadworks. And also problems on the A13 on the westbound exit Slip Road at the Wellington interchange. One lane's had to be closed where a car's broken down.
This is LBC.
It's time.
Ferrari now 0345 6060 973 LBC.
When the world slows.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
9 minutes before 8, back to that conversation concerning football in just a moment. Now, as the country comes out of coronavirus, anything that can help in the employment sector is to be welcomed. So what of these Flexi-job apprenticeships announced by the Chancellor at the budget? We'll hear more now from the Chancellor's colleague, Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, who joins me now. Good morning, Secretary of State. Just remind the listeners, how do they work?
So there's certain industries, Nick, that have missed out on the benefits of being able to really benefit from apprenticeships. We all know they create an amazing opportunity for young people, but people of all ages to get the skills and be learning while they're earning. But there's certain industries, such as the creative industry, such as construction, such as agriculture, where actually there's a lot of people that are working on short-term contracts, and what it does, it gives them a flexibility maybe to get an apprenticeship with LBC, but then actually maybe to be able to work for other companies during that apprenticeship, so they get experience of not obviously working with some of your inferior rivals, Nick, but some of the competition that's maybe out there. So they get a broad range of experience if LBC aren't going to be able to have them full time initially.
But it stays within the one sector. It stays within the one sector, does it, Secretary of State? It doesn't mean that I suddenly then also go and work on the land milking cows or whatever it might be.
It won't mean you milking cows,
right,
Nick, though I imagine you'd be brilliant at it.
I can shear a sheep as it goes, believe it or not, but that's probably a conversation for another time.
It'd be very much focused on the creative industry sector,
right.
So it would be all relevant because it'll all be part of a structured apprenticeship, so they are able to get the knowledge and the experience in order to be able to one day even step into your shoes.
Well, indeed. Hope that doesn't come too soon. There's still a few bills for me to pay. What sort of what numbers of people might this apply to, and how will we know if it's been successful?
Well, we're starting off quite small. We're putting a fund of £7 million there for these important sectors. We want to we're starting the consultation today, and we'll be starting to roll out in July. And the peak season for people starting apprenticeships is August and September, where we'd hope to have tens of thousands of people of all ages taking on apprenticeships. And there's some really good incentives there. So the government will give a business £3,000 cash for taking on an apprentice. This really makes a difference in terms of supporting that business, but also giving them the opportunity to be able to develop new skills as well.
And where are details to be found, either for potential apprentices or employers? Is that your website?
It's all on the gov.uk website there.
Okay. Let's come to other matters while I have the Benevie on the line. We will now be moving India later this week onto the so-called red list, but not until 4 a.m. Friday. Why is it taking so long, Mr. Williamson?
Well, it's usual practice that when a country is going on to a red list that we give proper notification that it's going to be moving on to the red list, so people have the opportunity to sort out their affairs. Obviously, people who are returning before that deadline will still have to ensure that they're properly tested, and they'll have to go through the usual procedures, but they won't have to undertake in terms of a hotel quarantine. But after that deadline, everyone will be expected to do the hotel quarantine.
But there are estimates, Mr. Williamson, there are around 3,000 passengers arriving on 12 flights from 4 Indian cities into Heathrow from today through Friday. Again, wishing everyone safe passage and wish that this wasn't happening. Surely we should have acted sooner to prevent these folk arriving.
Well, the government always looks at the very best scientific and medical information that we're getting in, and takes the decision swiftly. But it's right that we give people notice of a change of circumstances. That's the approach that we've always had with all of the countries, and it would be wrong not to have a consistent approach here. But those passengers as are travelling in will still be expected to isolate. They'll still be expected to take those tests. And of course, the authorities will be checking up on those people to ensure that they are adhering to the rules.
Coming back very much to your brief, Mr. Williamson, as Education Secretary, the financial cost of making up for missed learning in England due to the pandemic is £15 billion, so says the Education Policy Institute. Is that a figure you recognise? If so, what are you and your colleagues going to do about it?
Well, Nick, we very much recognise the fact that action needs to be taken to support children as they catch up on some of the lost learning. The government's already announced, increases in school budgets amounting to £14.4 billion. But on top of that, we've already announced an additional £1.7 billion that's going directly into schools to support them in terms of the lost learning that they've experienced. But we've also commissioned a report, work by Sir Kevin Collins, to look at what additional things that we need to be undertaking and doing to ensure that children actually do catch up, whether that's driving up teacher quality and supporting teachers to be able to deliver the very best for children in the classrooms, whether that's doing targeted interventions. We've started to look at how we do tutoring, small group tutoring for children who've fallen most behind, and finally, how we look at the time element within the classroom and as to whether we need to do more in this area to give children extra time in the classroom.
All right, I mean, that's 1.7, which is a vast amount of money. This institute or this think tank saying 15 billion over 3 years, that's obviously 5 billion. Are you sure it's enough, Secretary of State?
Well, this is why we took the immediate action to put extra money into schools straight away so that they can benefit from that in terms of running summer schools. But part of a review is we're looking at what more needs to be done.
All right, last couple of things. How much do you enjoy your football, Secretary of State?
I do enjoy my football. I obviously haven't had the privilege of being able to watch a live match for a while, but I wouldn't profess to be an expert.
Do you follow a team? Do you follow a football team?
I do, Nick. I do.
Well, it's not a state secret to ask what football team the Education Secretary...
No, not at all, not at all. So I live just outside Wolverhampton, so quite rightly, I follow, along with my daughters, Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Well, that is a classic team that is punching way above its weight, that has done phenomenally well, admittedly dropped down a little bit, but has forced its way into the Premier League, and very comfortably too, and could be left behind by this so-called Super Six. Your reaction to that, and indeed now the involvement of the Duke of Cambridge, Mr. Williamson?
Well, it's quite simply wrong. What is being proposed by these 6 breakaway clubs. You know, football clubs are based in their community. They actually have the roots there. It's where they gain their strength from. It's actually the people that support them in good times and bad. And these 6 owners seem to have forgotten that. And this is not just opposed by, fans across the country. It's opposed by the players in these clubs themselves and the managers as well. It's just quite simply not right. It's not. It's losing track of what football is about. And of course, football is, of course, it's about the fan base, but it's also about the competition. It's about making sure it's not just who wins the Premier League, but it's also who survives and makes sure they don't drop down. And the idea that, you pick 6 clubs and they're forever there, it just doesn't work. It ignores everything that's so important about football and why people are so passionate about it.
Well, your team's not going to drop down this year with the position they're in, are they, Mr. Williamson?
I'm a firm believer that it may not be sort of within the grasp this year.
Yes, just remind my listeners what position Wolverhampton Wanderers find themselves in this morning in the Premier League. What position might that be, Mr. Williamson? You're good with numbers.
It's number 12 on the Premier League.
Well done. Okay.
I'm sure you didn't know that. So
no, I didn't. Lastly, Mr. Williamson, be honest. Have you ever been thrown out of a pub?
I'm not sure why this is quite relevant to the interview there, Nick.
Well, Labour leader had an unfortunate moment, a senior politician down in Bath.
I don't recall such an event there, Nick.
I'm pleased to hear that. Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, always a privilege to have you here on LBC, where the time is 8 o'clock and news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the chairman of the European Super League says the clubs behind the proposals are doing it to save football. Florentino Perez is also president of Real Madrid, one of the 12 Spanish, English and Italian teams currently involved. He's insisted they have to make the sport more attractive at the